Pastor Dwayne and myself. And the purpose of this panel really is to just begin a conversation about racism and justice. And, I just want to acknowledge the fact that Mike is black, obviously. Pastor Dwayne's white, I'm Asian. We're not spokespeople for our respective racial communities. I mean, we want to, though, share from our perspective, and I think it is significant and important that we hear from a black man, a white guy, and an Asian guy, and I think that's helpful. I also want to acknowledge the fact that when we start entering into conversations like this, it could be uncomfortable, and actually my hope is that not just for us, but for us in our church family, that we begin to have more uncomfortable conversations. Now, that doesn't mean that we go into it without, some sense of sensitivity. Actually, I think we do need to continue to grow in our understanding and to be sensitive, but I just think, we can't get away from the fact that these are hard topics to talk about, but it's necessary. I also wanted to just let those of you know that our intent actually was today to do a Q&A panel, but instead of doing a Q&A panel, we decided to do the Q&A mailbag, and so we're going to try to address people's questions actually via a monthly thing that we're going to do during our worship services that are, we're going to address those questions that are appropriate for the broad spectrum of our church. For those questions that might be a little bit more pointed to maybe not as broad of an audience, we might address those via other mediums. But that's how we're going to do the Q&A section. But today we just want to kind of do a panel that almost allows you to enter into this conversation that we want to have about racism and race and sharing our perspective on things. So if you would join me, I'm going to pray real quick as we start this time. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can join together as brothers in Christ, and we pray, God, that what gets spoken today would be helpful, would be insightful, and we pray, God, that you would superintend everything that's going to happen, not only what is spoken, but what is received. So I pray, God, that what happens now in these next few minutes that we get to share with each other, that it would move the ball forward in dealing with this tough issue and how we ought to think of things and how we ought to respond. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So, again, gentlemen, thank you so much. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us to have this conversation. And, right off the bat, I wanted to ask this question, and I'm going to direct it to you first, Micah, is, for me as an Asian guy, right? I know if somebody is talking and they say the word Oriental, there's something in me that does, that's just weird. And I don't resonate with that. But I think for many of us, we wonder, what do you prefer when it comes to black community, African American community? What is your preference, and what do you sense is, what's appropriate to speak of?
No, I think for me, it's kind of the same. I just prefer black. It's easier that way. It's directed straight to the point. I know African American is like more the PC answer, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for me and the people in my house, it's just easier, just black. You can probably just kind of encompass everybody. You say African American, you could also be talking about South Africans that are white. So,
yeah.
I think it's easier if you just say black, you know exactly which group of people you're talking about.
Yep.
And boom, you're right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I apologize because I think I said African American in the message today, so my bad.
It's all good.
All right, see that? I told you sometimes, man, you just don't know. And all right, how about for you?
White. It's the same reasons as for Pastor Micah. It's just simpler.
Yeah.
Gets right to the point. Right. I think Caucasian has been used a lot. It always feels a little too PC.
Yeah.
And then when people use, like, the new one is European American. I'm not European by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm American and I'm white. I'm a white American.
Yeah.
That's
all
it.
right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Black, white. Please do not call me yellow. I don't resonate with that. So Usually, for the broad spectrum, I think Asian's fine. You know, Asian American. I know we got Canadians out there. Man, we're sorry. If we say Asian American, we're sorry. All right, all right. Micah, there's been just a number of incidents that have happened recently regarding racism and police brutality, and you know, most notably, you know, the murder of George Floyd. But there's been other incidences recently as well. Can you just describe how these events have impacted you personally and your family?
Yeah, I know for me personally, you know, I've had a, you know, just growing up, you know, you gotta get used to, you know, how you're supposed to respond when you get pulled over. There's, you know, certain protocol, kind of like how you were talking about in the message today. You know, hands on the steering wheel. You know, I've gone so far as to just put my hands out the window, so that you know I'm not doing anything, and then just narrating everything that I do. You know, I'm reaching for the middle console. This is where my wallet is. My license is in my wallet. I'm reaching over to the glove box to grab my registration. You know, just narrating everything that I'm doing so that they know. So I can see how people who don't know can be shocked by this. You know, for people who don't have to put up with this, I understand how for them it's like, this is eye-opening, and it's been happening for a long time. So, you know, me and Taryn have just kind of made it a point where we never really involved the kids in it too much. But now that it's just becoming a thing, there's always, you know, and our oldest just turned 14, so he's getting close to, you know, driving age. And so now we're having those conversations like, hey, we just want you to make it home safely. You know, that's a real conversation that happens in black homes when you start driving that. We just want you to make it home safely. You know, we can't get a new you. We can get a new car, you know, we can file a complaint, whatever needs to be done, but we can't get a new you. And I don't know how many other races have to have that conversation with their kids, you know, and that's tough. So that's, nobody wants to have those conversations. You know, you already worry enough when your kids start driving, you know, but then to add that on top of it, you know, is huge. And so I know for us, it's really opened up a dialogue. My dad has really opened up with me more over the past couple of weeks here, since this has been going on, than he probably has my whole life. You know, just letting me know about his experiences, and now I understand him a whole lot better now. So for all the bad that's been there, there's been a lot of silver linings for me personally.
That's awesome that you could see the silver linings. Yeah, like I said in the message, I've never had that conversation with my kids, and I don't know. Have you ever thought of even having that conversation?
No.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the privilege of just not having to have even that mindset that a lot of times we're unaware of until we hear it from a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, how have you personally experienced racism in your life, or injustice, or people close to you? You know, uncles, aunts, whatever.
I mean, I think, you know, when we got to about elementary school, we started going to a Christian school that my parents worked at. So, you know, we went there, and as the years kind of went by, the first year there were some other black kids there, but by the second year I was the only black boy in my class. And so, you know, I would get invited to the sleepovers. You know, I kind of got invited to all the sleepovers because I was the only black kid. So, well, the only black boy, you know, and then there was like 2 black girls. And so, you know, we kind of stayed tight. But you kind of hear things, but you just, as a kid, you didn't really dig too deep into it. You know, you just kind of say things in passing, you know, and so I think the first time I really experienced it, that I was just really just blatant, I was 18, and it was the last day of school. I was going to pick up my cap and gown and all that, and I was driving from Jack in the Box at lunchtime back to the school, and I was driving in a car that my sister had driven in for like 2 or 3 years, and my dad had driven it, and they hadn't gotten pulled over. And so had the window down, and I'm coming back, and I'm maybe half a mile away from the school. Cops hit a U-turn. Nobody ever wants the cops to hit a U-turn. You know when they hit a U-turn, you know they're coming after you, right? So I'm just like, man, just, you know, do the speed limit. I'm right here by the school. Hopefully when they see me put my turn signal on, turn to the school, then they kind of just chill out. And they got behind me, turned into the school, they turned in, flipped the lights on. I was like, all right. So he comes over, and he license and registration. He gives me the whole spiel, and I don't know why I've been pulled over. So I don't know what part of me prompted to ask.
Yeah.
So there's two guys, two cops in the car. One gets out. So one's standing on the passenger side, the other one's on the driver's side. All my friends are driving by,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I asked him. I kind of stick my head out the window and started walking back. Hey, what am I getting pulled over for?
Yeah.
And when I stuck my head out the window, his partner pulls his gun. And so
Wow.
he's like, "'Cause your windows are too tinted."
Wow.
I was like, all right. And just me being 18, I'm more embarrassed that my friends are seeing me get pulled over than I am worried about
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, this sucks. It's my last day of school.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just became a common thing. It was just me and Taryn would be driving somewhere and just get pulled over. Her car was significantly nicer than mine, but we probably still weren't supposed to be driving in it. And so it was just one of those things where we get pulled over and it's like, well, here we go again, and go through the motions. And but when I was, I think maybe a year out of high school, maybe not even, I went to the city of Banning, and my car broke down, and I didn't have a crowbar. I didn't have the bar to take my rims off, take the tire off. So I just walked down to an auto shop, and I walk in there, and they start calling me the N-word when I get in there.
Wow.
And I'm like, can I just get I just need somebody to help me out. And the lady behind the desk says, here, just take this and go. Just take it and go. And I'm like, I'll bring it back. And she said, no, take it, just change your tire and go.
Wow.
And so I was like, all right. Wow. And it was really the first time ever in my life that I was presented with it like that. Wow. That blatantly. And I mean, I'd driven through Banning and stuff, all the time, but I'd never, been there. And I was dressed nicely because I was coming from an interview, but yeah, it was probably one of the scariest moments of my life at that moment, where it was like, I don't know if I'm making it home.
Yeah.
And that's, really when it kind of set in. And there's a part of my heart that kind of hardened toward,
Yeah.
that, because it was like, man, I've never experienced this before. This is for real. And I'm 18, maybe about to be 19, but yeah, it was, it's life changing.
Yeah. 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 Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I remember you sharing too. We had a conversation earlier in the week, and you were talking about interviews and how you have to, just the thought process that goes into that.
Yeah.
I want to share a little bit about that.
Oh, so, there's just this thing, where, and it's very intentional in the Black community where, for instance, Taryn's parents, they gave all their daughters, they have 3 girls, they gave them all white names, to get them a better chance of getting an interview when they get into the working world.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, there's nothing Black about my name.
Yeah.
Micah's not a Black name. Clark definitely is not a Black last name.
Yeah.
So you see that on an application, and I've never not got an interview before. Like my resume, it read well, and I had it's a pretty white name.
Yeah.
So they were always a little stunned when they saw me.
Yeah.
Especially during the days that I had like a really big fro. When Allen Iverson was really big and he had a cornrows, so I had the cornrows, and I showed up to an interview, and it's like, whoo. Now,
We got to get those.
I could dress, so I'd be dressed, but yeah, there's just this thought where, don't, just kind of want to assimilate, and just kind of find a way to become invisible, and that just kind of goes by giving yourself a really generic name.
Wow.
Just so that you can kind of blend in.
Yeah.
And then there's just also that part of it being like, this is the system that's in place.
Yeah.
Don't buck it. Just find how to get into it.
Yeah.
Don't expect it to change.
Yeah.
So it's like, your grandparents, they didn't change for us, didn't change for my parents. It's not going to change for you or your kids. So just learn how to navigate the system. Right. And you see how we do that as Americans. We tell our young ladies, dress this way so that boys won't look at you this way. Instead of telling the boys,
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
look at young lady, don't do this just because, and so like we tell people to do this so that you don't have this happen to you. Instead of addressing the issue, we tell people how to work around the issue.
Got it.
So if you just do this, if you hear people, just cooperate with the police, you know, if you just do what they're asking you to do, it's like, sure, but if you're not going to listen to me, you know, if I'm telling you I can't breathe, at what point,
Yeah.
how much more compliance
Right.
do you need?
Right.
You know, I'm handcuffed, I'm laying down, you've got your hand, your knee in my neck.
Yeah.
I cannot comply anymore.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
so at what point do we look and say, all right, there's a problem with the system?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. What are some of the things that black people have to consider because we live in a racist society that is often stacked against black people? So you mentioned like like Terrence Folks, they named her with pretty generic white sounding names just so she could get her foot in the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things that you can think of, or even things that your uncles, aunties, or relatives had to deal with, you know, and just working, living in this society.
Right. So there's it kind of becomes this battle that you want to learn how to, you want to learn what, as we would call it, we want to do the white stuff. You know, you want to, you want to, skateboard or,
Yeah.
that was big back in, back in the day. So you may want to skateboard or lean on things that you may not see black people doing.
Playing soccer.
Playing soccer. Right.
Right. You're a soccer player.
Soccer
right?
player. So
Yeah.
so playing soccer, things like that. But then also not wanting to identify with the black part of you.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of finding out stuff, over this past week. Like my aunt, for instance, if you were to see my grandparents, my dad's parents, my grandfather is much darker than my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was just so my dad he's fairly light skinned, and so is my my aunt. But my grandmother did not want them to look black,
Wow.
and so there's like you keep your hair straight and whatnot, and really just
Wow.
kind of fit the culture and whatnot, But it was hard for my aunt, who was like, I was never really able to just embrace my blackness because I was always being told, don't do that.
Don't do that.
And so it makes it even harder, I know for like me and my sister, and then growing up in a Christian house, we didn't listen to a lot of that, the secular stuff.
Uh-huh.
So, we would go back to hang out with family, from, that other part of town. And, they're like, man, you don't listen to Tupac? Man, you don't listen to Biggie? It's like, man, well, first of all, I'm not allowed to.
Yeah.
And number two,
Yeah.
man, what do you know about Nirvana? Because, man, what do you know about Pearl Jam? Because, man, that's where it's at, and it's like, but that's what all my friends were listening to.
Oh, man.
So you're trying to juggle both sides. And
Wow.
there's a lot of black people out there who are like, they're trying to juggle, and it's like, I want to be able to be accepted by,
Yeah.
my black brothers and sisters, but I also want to be able to be accepted by, white America.
Yeah.
And I know that part of being accepted means that I have to give up some of these things, like,
Yeah.
I mean, the blackest person you might listen to may wind up being, the guy from Hootie and the Blowfish. I mean, that may, that's towing the line there. Like that's as far as it goes. And so, I've had a lot of those questions growing up, where it's like, man, I didn't know that, I didn't know that it was pink under your black skin. I had no idea. I just figured it was more black. And you'd be surprised when my blood is also red.
Wow.
But it's like
Wow.
having those conversations, and part of it
Yeah.
is just childhood curiosity, but then other parts of it is just like, really?
Yeah.
Like it's really just skin deep. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
it just stops there. We're really the same after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. PD, you're obviously not a racist, but you're part of a racial group that has largely been in power,
Yeah.
and at least in this country, and the perpetrators of racism over the centuries. Have you ever felt like this thing called white guilt, and how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think it's different for me in the sense that I don't know that I feel white guilt as it's defined, because it's hard to feel guilty about something you didn't personally do.
Yeah.
Right? So and I've had to think about this, like, when I read the stories and when I see the news and when I see things like that, especially when it's like white on black hate crime,
Yeah.
it doesn't immediately make me feel guilty in the sense like I'm responsible for that.
Uh-huh.
It does make me feel empathy because I'm a human being, and
Right.
this is another human being being subjected and hurt and,
Yeah.
and destroyed. I mean, it's a horrible thing. So, and the same thing when you read history. You know, I don't automatically put myself in the shoes of like the slave owners who are white. You know, I read
Yeah.
that going, that's horrific and horrible. Who could ever do that? In the same way that, you know, my ancestors were German. I don't automatically put myself in the shoes of the Nazis when they were oppressing the Jews in the
Yeah.
Holocaust.
Yeah.
So it's different for me. I do think there's a culpability, and so I don't feel guilt about it, about the crimes being committed. I feel guilty about not speaking up more. I feel the shame of not being more involved as much as I could be. And so I think that's a part of that comes into it. But you know, when it comes to like something like white privilege, I do believe that exists, and coming to terms with, wow, there's a lot of opportunities I'm afforded just because of the color of my skin, or even not having to think a certain way. You know, like when I was listening to your dad talk the other night, and when he was talking about, you know, having to make noise with stuff that he would pick up off the shelf in a
Right.
store to make sure people knew that he wasn't trying to steal anything, he was just trying to touch something.
Right.
Wow.
And just to have that kind of awareness, I've never had to think about that. And you know, that's one of those privileges that you don't understand. You aren't even aware of it until you hear it from the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So is there a guilt that comes from that? Sure. There's a guilt that comes from having been an unwitting participant in a system that has allowed that to take place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, you know, we have other white folks in our church family. Is there anything that you would speak to them about in terms of any angst they might feel
Sure.
with all this?
Yeah, I mean, speaking as a white American, I think one of the hard things is it feels like there's a lot of people that want to do the right thing, that have the right motivations, that have the right heart. I mean, I know a ton of people who are white who no racist inclinations whatsoever, at least not intentionally, right?
Right.
We might have an unintentional racism that I
Yeah.
think all of us can be guilty of.
Right.
But I think that one of the things that creates a lot of angst is it feels like they're always redefining the terms by what you should do or what you shouldn't do. And it feels like, you know, someone's always writing a new book, and you know, academia is really great at self-promotion, and so they always come up with a new term. Like the newest one I've read about is white fragility and having to grapple with that and
Yeah.
stuff. And so it feels like I remember when I was a kid, you would be taught like, don't see color, just treat everyone equally.
Right.
Well, now that's considered a racist idea, to
Right.
not see culture and to not see color, right?
Right.
And so, and there's truth to that.
Right.
And so you have to always be like learning and constantly improving. And sometimes I think that some people just shut down. It's like, I can't, I want to do what's right, but I also don't want to do what's wrong. And I'm scared to death I'm going to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because it seems like I'm always putting my foot in my mouth.
Yeah. Right.
And I was
Yeah.
trying to do the right
Right.
thing.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of angst created by the terms getting thrown around
Yeah.
without people actually doing the research to understand the usage of those terms, and to push back on some of them and say, I don't know if this is helpful for the overall conversation. I don't know if this is actually helping create a dialogue,
Right.
or if this is just creating another barrier
Yeah.
to open and honest dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Dude, what would you say to that in terms of the angst that people might feel or the uncertainty and yeah, you know, how do they navigate that and have dialogue?
See, I think it's, and that's when it falls back on all the parties involved.
Yeah.
Because now it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't ever want it to look like, you know, that we're unapproachable. You know, and I know, you know, Jess made a great point, you know, the other day where she's like, I really want to, but I don't know how.
Right.
And I don't want to come across as like, you know, I know that, you know, Rachel was like, I don't want to come across like a white savior complex, you
Yeah.
know, but she's like,
Yeah.
but my heart is to help.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, for us, for me and Taryn, we've just made it a point to be transparent. So people know that they can come to us comfortably, ask us questions, and say, hey, you know, how do we help?
Yeah.
And so that for us, it's a hard thing, you know, of having to be able to say, we're not going to be able to make any progress towards reconciliation if the black community as a whole has hardened hearts, you know, and we've got to be approachable still, because people are saying, hey, I want to help. I want to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and then we have to understand that we can't do this ourselves. This is a human issue, you know.
Absolutely.
And if we continue to make it a color thing, then it's gonna be within that's your issue. You guys figure it out.
Right.
You know, if we make it a human thing where we're saying like, yo guys, this is not right.
Yeah.
You know, we're all coming together.
Yeah.
So our hearts are open and saying, man, look, how? You know, how can I be of help? You know, as a white guy, how can I help out without seeming like, you know, I'm trying to take over,
Right.
or I'm, you know, I don't want to come across as like I'm being condescending or just
Paternal, like,
right?
yeah.
You know, and so you know, here we are just being able to say like, hey, just, you know, it starts with just you know being aware
Yeah.
of you know seeing the color. You know, we have to be willing to see the color. You
Yeah.
know, because that's where the beauty is. You know, the beauty is in the color.
Yeah.
You know, we're all different for a reason. You know, and so
Yeah.
you see the beauty in the color and the culture, but then take a step and say, man, I'm gonna intentionally have a relationship with people who don't look like me.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and having these conversations and really starting it at home,
Yeah.
talking to your kids, you know, and just listen, we're all the same. You
Yeah.
know, we've all got different backgrounds and whatnot. I mean, I grew up in a pretty diverse town, you know, especially the older I got, it was really diverse, you know, and I mean, we had a kid who was, you know, we had an Indian kid who lived in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and then we had a Hawaiian family that lived next door to us, and then
Yeah.
obviously we were black, and then we have some white people that lived behind us. And so, like, going into the Indian kid's house, you know, they were Hindu, you know, but just the smell, you know, that was, I had never experienced that before. So
Yeah.
as they explained it to me, I understood it, and I was able to appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was hard,
Yeah.
you know, you're 12, 13 years old, it's, you know, it's a culture shock.
Yeah.
He would invite us over, and I was like, man, I don't want to go over to his house.
Yeah.
But as his grandmother began to explain it to us,
Uh-huh.
you know, and this fragrance is this, and this is for when we're cooking, and this is why it smells like this, I understood it.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, I'm able to look back and go like, man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And just like they came over to our house and they, you know, they might, you know, whatever kind of fried food or whatever we had going on, aromatherapy or whatever it was, you know,
Yeah.
and then the Hawaiian people, I mean, we were all so different and diverse, and there's beauty in that. So to say that I don't see that, well, then I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
Because you're missing out on, you know, one of the greatest things that God gave us,
Yeah.
you know, in diversity. You
Yeah.
know, but it comes back to us as humans being able to say, hey, look, we don't want to see anybody getting treated like that. We should not
Right.
want to see anybody getting treated like that.
That's right.
And we immediately put up these barriers and these walls where it's like, oh, you're attacking me. You know, when you hear Black Lives Matter, oh, that's an attack. All lives matter.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, it's not an attack.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we know all lives matter.
Right. Right.
You know, but like we have to be able to say right now we're talking about these lives,
Right. Right.
and then we'll get to
Right.
when all lives matter equally. Then we can say all lives matter,
right.
but we're not there yet. So then, even if we get done with this one, and we have to move on to Asian lives matter, you know, Hispanic lives matter, then so be it, and we'll just keep on going
Yeah.
until we can say with confidence all lives matter equally.
Yeah.
We already know all lives matter.
Yeah.
That's a given. We
Yeah.
come in knowing that all lives matter. It's the part on the
Right.
end that nobody wants to put
Yeah.
equally.
Yeah.
You know, and I think sometimes maybe you could say Black Lives Matter too.
Yeah.
You know, and put that
That's
TOO
right.
at the end.
That's
You know,
right.
so it's like,
That's right.
so we know. You know, because we just want everybody to, you know, to get treated
That's right.
the same.
Right. It diffuses it, right?
Right.
When you know, it's obviously been an issue for centuries, and when we say, well, all lives matter, it's like diffusing the point. You're missing the point.
Right.
And it's maddening. Just like in my blog, I wrote about Kaepernick, and his kneeling was to protest, you know, police brutality, and then it got morphed. Someone hijacks it and says, "Oh, you're disrespecting the flag." No. This is about you're disrespecting the military. No. That's I'm not doing that.
Well,
Right.
it's a defensive tactic because then
Yeah.
you don't have to address the issue at
Right.
hand. You can make it about something else, then it gets politicized, and then it's just same old argument back and forth.
Right.
Right.
And nothing ever happens.
Right.
And everybody's like, whew, dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to do
We
it.
don't talk about that anymore. And it's supposed to be uncomfortable. Like these are things that we've, you know, this is a system that's in place, and it's supposed to be uncomfortable. You know, it's just we have these uncomfortable conversations when we're opening up gates of freedom. You
Yeah.
know, and it's no different than us sitting down talking to our kids.
Yeah.
You know, and having the talk with them, and then saying like, hey, listen, things are changing.
Yeah.
Let me make you aware.
Yeah.
You know, so that you understand everything that's going on. And so it's the same thing. We're saying like, hey guys, here's the system that's in place, It's a broken system.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know how to fix it, but I can tell you a couple of things that we could probably do because it's on autopilot now. It's a system that's been in place for so long that there's really nobody running it at this point. We just know this is how we do things, you know. And so now it's having to come in and you really do have to come in and reinvent the wheel and say that, like, just because there's a woman in charge does not mean that we are pandering to the women in the country. It's just like, no, she's qualified for that job, you know, and she was the best candidate, and that's why she has the job, period. We're not meeting a quota. We're not trying to hit numbers or anything like that. We got to get past that mindset. But that's how bad the system is, where that when we do something different, they immediately think, oh man, they're just trying to hit numbers, you know, and we're just, they got to meet a quota. Oh, they got a black guy here trying to meet a quota. You know, they get more money from the government if, you know, if they're diverse enough. You know, you have certain numbers and it looks good, and I don't want that to be our mindset. But we as the church, we have to start to set the tone.
Yeah.
You know, instead of continuing looking at the world and saying, what are they doing? Oh yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Like, the world should be looking at us and saying, I mean, and as divided as we are,
Yeah.
you know, we go to church on Sundays and you got the black church there, the Hispanic church there, and the white church there, and the Indian church here. And then we're trying to tell, as a church, we're saying, come on guys, we gotta unify. And the world's like, well, when y'all figure it out, then come and talk to us.
Yeah.
You know, when you guys diversify,
Yeah.
then come have a conversation. But until then,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep doing what we're doing.
I remember when I first entered ministry, one of the statistics that broke my heart was that the statistic that like secular organizations use to prove that racism and segregation still exist in America was 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. Most segregated hour in
Oh, yeah.
America. Right?
Yeah. And they're using us. So you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
they're using the church.
Yep. I think for Asians, it's been an interesting quandary at times because oftentimes the issue of racism is couched as it's a black and white thing,
Right.
right? And you know, I get it. It's easy to phrase it that way, but the result of that is oftentimes as an Asian man, I felt like I'm not invited to this conversation. You know, I feel marginalized, and I think part of the culture of that Asians come from is you're invited in.
Yeah.
You don't put yourself out there. You wait to be invited. In fact, there was a book written by an Asian author, and the title of it was "Invitation to Lead." And I think part of it was the mindset of an Asian is you just it's rude almost to insert yourself in, which is interesting, you know. And I'm not saying it's right or whatever. I'm just saying that's how many Asians operate. Just feeling like, okay, it's that, you know, their issue, and they'll figure it out. In fact, I was thinking about not only am I Asian, I'm also a Japanese American, and for our particular, you know, strain of being Asian, the Japanese, well, we were during the war, and that's my parents, their age, they were rounded up, you know, they had to leave all their possessions, they could only take what they could carry, put into a camp where they were told that they were doing it for their protection, but the guns were pointed at them. The barbed wire wasn't to keep people out, it was to keep them in,
Right.
you know, and there's that whole thing, and the prevailing feeling at the time was, okay, we're here because we stick out. We're easily identified.
Right.
And so when we get out, assimilate. When you get out, let's not hold on so much to our Japanese culture. And so there's been some studies that show that the Japanese have the highest outmarriage of any of the Asian cultures, that we marry outside of our race, you know. And it's interesting. So this idea of letting go of of our culture and not sticking out, I think there's a sort of this mentality of I just want to fit in, I don't want to cause waves, because it's hurt in the past.
Yeah.
And I just think we acknowledge that, but we don't make an excuse now. You know, we can understand where we come from, but we have to understand, I think, okay, I don't have to live in that mindset anymore. Yeah. I was just thinking about how I think for some people that mindset is, I was thinking about an analogy of how you have this father who's very abusive, and he's a white man, and he has two sons. One's a black man, a black boy, and one's an Asian boy. And the father is abusive, and both have been hurt. And the black boy speaks out, and he gets beaten. He just keeps getting beaten. And the Asian boy watches this, and he's going, I don't want to get beaten.
Right.
I know now. Don't speak out. Just stay quiet.
Right.
Just obey. If you just do what you're told, you won't get beat.
Yeah.
And so we look sometimes at the black community, just go, why don't you just don't break a law and you won't get beat.
Right.
And we think of it as, it's that simple, right? And and I think the way things have gone is that, the Asians have been called model minority and all this stuff. And, we obey, and then we get invited to some party,
Right.
we get to, have access to some things, right? But it's like, I think for Asians, we have to just look and go, wait a second now. Taking that analogy a little further and looking at, well, okay, maybe we're at a stage where the father's 90 years old and we are adults, and we don't have to live in that mindset
Right.
of, I can't protect not only myself, I can't stand up for my brother. I have a voice, and it makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, but that's the system, and I think it goes back to that system that we kind of have,
Yeah.
Where a lot of times it's like when you hear people bring up the slave thing or whatever, it's like, well, you're not slaves anymore.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that should be
Right.
good enough, where you're not in the camps anymore.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the thing where, and it's like, but that it should have never been.
Right.
And it's like if you're saying that we're not doing that bad thing to you anymore, so be happy, but it's like, no.
You don't understand all that happened in the past that,
Right.
yeah, that
Right.
Creates this thing that,
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
when you're asking for civil rights, like I'm just asking for you to treat me civilly.
yeah,
Not asking for anything greater than that right now. I'm just saying, can you treat me like a human being?
yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
That's what they were fighting for. Can you just treat me
Yeah.
like a human being? It was really that simple. And it's like, I'm just asking for you to treat me the way that you treat everybody else.
yeah,
At the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for the jobs and the money and all that. Just get the dogs off. Turn the water off.
yeah,
Let me eat where I'm paying.
right.
Can we, just little simple things like, and you look and go, but you're not in chains anymore. You can,
Right.
you can have a job. Just like, we tell the women, well, you can vote now and you can drive. And it's like,
Yeah.
I should have always been able to vote. Like I shouldn't have had to fight for it.
Yeah.
And so it's like we act like we're doing somebody a favor by giving them basic human rights and then saying, well, you should be happy with that.
Right, right.
You're not in the camp anymore, so
Right.
I mean, you should be happy with that.
Right.
You're not a slave anymore. You're free. You should be happy with that.
Yeah,
And it's like that. When me and you talked, that day, and it's like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But there's a large, percentage of people who are saying, I don't even know what bootstraps are.
Yeah.
I don't have boots.
yeah,
And it's like if they would just, try.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a system that's rigged, when there's a system that's put in place, where even when you do try,
yeah,
that it's designed for you to fail because it's not made for you.
yeah,
And it's like we have a cabinet at home where it's me and Taryn put our stuff. And we tell the kids, this is not for you. So there's nothing that you can do that's ever going to allow you to get in that cabinet because this stuff is not for you. And so it's like, it doesn't matter how good you are or whatever, you're not going to be able to get in that cabinet. It's kind of the same thing, And so it's like, when the system is designed for you to stay where you are and where you are, and for us to hold on to what we have, as the, if the system is like, well, we want to maintain the money, whether we're going to make sure that you can't get it.
yeah,
You know, and so like maybe every so often we'll let somebody in. I mean, you can't help it if there's a Tiger Woods or
Yeah.
you know. I
Yeah.
mean, those things happen. You know, those
Right.
would be an anomaly. You know, but it's not. You know, and then it's like, well, just be an athlete. You know, or just do this, and it's like no,
Yeah.
no, and so it's just how do we begin to buck the system,
Yeah.
you know, and not break it, you know, because it's not all bad. I mean, like we don't want to completely destroy the police.
Right.
You know, because they're here. It's
Right.
for them. It's more of a just rethinking, you know. And I know for me working in Charlotte, it was like we were constantly reminded that we are public servants, that we serve publicly, and don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
That was very important to them to you know to continue to remind us you're a public servant.
Yeah.
You are here because they're here. The moment that the citizens are no longer here, then we don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
So don't forget why you have a job.
Right.
So we were always redirected to remember that the only reason why we have a job is because there's people that live in Charlotte. And as soon as the people of Charlotte leave, then we got to go find jobs somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that mindset helped us
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us didn't live in Charlotte. We just commuted to Charlotte to work. And so our fire chief was always real big, like, don't come up here starting problems and then go back to your home because you don't have to deal with it. And for the longest, you used to have to live in Charlotte if you wanted to work for Charlotte, police, fire. But it was because you're going to treat people a lot differently if you know that you might see them at the grocery store the next day.
No. Yeah.
As a police officer, you know that if I keep pulling you, these black guys over, it doesn't matter what part of town you live in, Charlotte's not that big. I know I could potentially run into one of these guys at a Panther game or a baseball game or just somewhere, and they're gonna know that I treated them poorly.
Right.
So it's a little bit different when you're now policing your community, and that's part of the problem is that there's no relationship between the communities. You know, you grab some guy who's never really had any black friends before, and maybe didn't play any sports, and now you put him on the south side of town, and he's like, culture shock.
Yeah.
You know, so all he has to go off is what he's seen on TV, what he's been told by the department. Gotta watch them. But if you have that relationship, and definitely if you think that, man, I might see you at the grocery store, you know, I might see you at the local grocery store tomorrow, probably not gonna call you out your name, probably gonna treat you a little bit differently, knowing that I could run into you.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just, you know, remembering why we're here. We're here to serve.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we're here. And when we begin to abuse the people that we're serving, we're really not serving anymore.
Wow. Yesterday was a cool day for me. I was at a 40th high school reunion, and I know 40 years, and we did it
Getting old.
virtually. It's 40 years to the day, and it was cool. And they reminded me that our school was either the first or second most racially integrated school in the country.
Wow.
And it was amazing, and we just had such a great time catching up with all the different folks, and it was really beautiful. It was, in fact, last night I was just reflecting on the time I spent with these guys, and man, that was high school. When I was in junior high, there were race riots in my junior high.
Yeah.
It was nasty, and you know, it was the blacks and the Asians and the Samoans, and they were just fighting. And there weren't too many white people. The white people were getting picked on actually in junior high, but in high school it calmed down, and it was amazing. And it was pretty fantastic as people were just sharing how much love they had for each one, how much they just appreciated each one. And our class president was a white girl. And she was living in a kind of a white area, Queen Anne, and she said that she had her best friend was an Eskimo. And because of that, those two got picked on so much at that school. And they were harassed and just bullied. And she said when she came to Cleveland, everybody just welcomed her with open arms.
Yeah.
And it just impacted her so much. it was amazing. And everybody's like holding back tears, you know, because she's sharing how embraced she felt
Yeah.
as a white minority in this very racially diverse school. And this other white girl shares about how she had I think a 35-year career at Boeing, and people would, you know, said to her, you know, you get along with everybody. It doesn't matter, white, black, you just get along with everybody. She goes, that's how I grew up. I just grew up in that, you know. And I was sharing with my own kids how Rita and myself, our growing up experience was so different than theirs, because we live out in Issaquah, and it was for them predominantly white, and you know, they just weren't exposed,
Yeah.
you know. And to me, it just tells me that exposure is so important. That just, you know, and I'm not saying if you know, grew up in an all white neighborhood, you're a racist. That's not what I'm saying at all. Grew up in an all black neighborhood, you're not a racist. It's just that exposure though
Yeah.
helps. That building of the relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's having uncomfortable conversations is huge. Being willing to express things and, you know, be wrong.
Yeah.
And to ask for forgiveness and to say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I screwed up.
Yeah.
You know, the hard thing is, I think right now, because we live in like the cancel culture, where you say one wrong thing back 20 years ago,
Yeah,
and
you're
you're
out.
done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's even more fear now.
Yeah.
And that's on all sides, right? And it's not just talking about race, it's talking about just a host of issues.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, people are drawing more and more lines between themselves and putting kind of like these silent walls up of just, I just want to ignore it. I'm too scared to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Norm Macdonald, Dave Chappelle, they talk about it all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's intriguing to me that there's now like there's a movement almost to say, don't have these conversations. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't ask someone how to be an ally. And I'm going,
Right.
I thought we wanted to have conversations.
Yes.
And you're like, no. If you need to ask, you're part of the problem.
Oh my
Right.
gosh.
And
Right.
I've heard that. I've
Oh, I
been
have too.
told that to my face from other people.
Wow.
Oh,
And it's like, you shouldn't have to ask. You know, there's Google. Like,
I don't personally.
there's books to read. Okay, but that doesn't help. I mean,
Yeah.
it could help some of it.
Right.
But it's not going to change until we have these honest heart-to-heart conversations amongst each other.
Yeah.
And we break down those barriers and we cross over those divides.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
create human relationships.
Yeah.
You know, not just academic ideas and themes and talking points.
Yeah.
So,
No, but I think that's the problem though. I mean, books are great.
right.
I mean, books are great, but we're moving into a generation of where everything is, we would call them paperback firemen, where they could quote the whole manual to you, but they couldn't do anything when they got inside the building. They'd freeze up and forget. And so like we have a generation, I mean, even here at church, we have like paperback Christians who can tell you
Yeah.
everything that's in here, but when it's time to live out the gospel, I don't know. What do I do? You know, and it's like some of the biggest conversations and disagreements I've had about this issue has been with other Christ followers. You know, and for them it's just like, well, if we do this, if they would just do this, if they would just do this, and it's like, I don't care. I'm not going to go around in circles with the semantics. The fact of the matter is that nobody should be losing their life in the street.
Right.
Period. I don't care what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fake $20 bill is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
Jogging is not a death sentence.
Right.
And I don't care what was going on. Well, he wasn't wearing jogging clothes. I don't care if he was wearing jogging clothes. First of all, that's not a crime.
Right.
Second of all, trespassing is not, you don't get the death penalty for trespassing.
Right.
And so I don't care about all those little things. But it's been with a lot of Christ followers, and it's like, obviously you have not read this. You read it, but let it read you now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like we can't just, we want to be book smart, you know, but then we don't know how to apply it. And I think it's twofold, you know, where it's like, I get it, you know, I'm reading it here in the book. Okay, well now go apply it.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, for me, and I've been pretty vocal about it, but it's just like when it came time for the elections and all that, people were very, you know, adamant about like, you know, oh, Trump.
Right.
You know, and I don't care. You don't like it, we don't need to be friends anymore, but Trump. Or no Trump, you
Yeah.
know, Bernie. or
Yeah.
Hillary or whatever, you know, Obama. And people had no problem at all jumping on social media or whatever platform, putting stickers on their cars, flags in the yard, and letting everybody know this is who I support. But now that it's a matter of, you know, what they'll say it's race, but it's really just a human condition thing. Now everybody's like, I don't know, I don't want to post anything. You know, the church doesn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, people may not tithe, may not get the money. So what?
Yeah.
You know, it's just it doesn't matter. It's bigger than that.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, when do we start to say that, okay, these followers don't mean anything. We're not getting paid for these followers on social media. So if you lose them, you're not really losing anything.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you taking a stand and somebody's saying that I don't agree with you, you know, saying that I don't agree with people rioting, but I'm not focused on that part.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I'm focused on the injustice part.
Right.
You know, and so that's where we got to get back to, is just saying like, look, all the behind the scenes stuff, I don't have to support them rioting to support injustice.
Right.
You know, just, you know, you saying that, oh, you know, I don't, if I support this and I support the rioting, no.
It's
Right.
changes the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And our country's become so polarized politically that you draw those lines in the sand and you go back to your
Right.
tribalist mentality of us versus them.
Right.
And this shouldn't be a political issue. This isn't a right versus left. This is a human issue.
Exactly.
This is right versus wrong.
Right.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of people that are on the more conservative side of things that are saying, I'm leery of throwing my support towards this because I don't know what else is attached to it. It's
Yeah.
like, just move past that. Don't worry about that.
Right.
Here's what's right. Here's what we know from Scripture. Here's what you know in your heart is right.
Yeah.
You need to throw your support towards this.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I know we had a conversation, you know, jumping off of that whole idea of canceled culture, you know, and
Mhm.
I thought you had a great perspective on it when we had talked earlier. And yeah, I just thought it'd be good for them to hear just kind of your perspective on that. You know, people trying and then they might make a mistake,
Right.
or and maybe they just did something blatantly wrong, you know, and,
Right.
and yeah,
No, I mean, I really do look at it as, you know, in the way of just saying that there are going to be some really tainted, you know, there's going to be some dirty hands that are going to help move this thing along. It's just the way it is, you know, and we have to be willing to have that happen. You know, if we start canceling everybody because of something that happened, you know, was it a habit? You know, I mean, the blackface thing was really big
Right.
at one point in time when we were looking for pictures of anybody, you know, but like, and I'm never saying that it's right,
Right.
but if you were blackfacing at 18 and you're 62 now and we're bringing it up,
Yeah.
and it's like, but you never blackfaced again, and now they're saying you can't help because you blackfaced. Really?
yeah,
I feel, I mean, and this is just me personally, but it's like, people grow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of grace, you know, and God operates in the grace area, you know, which is the gray area. We got to get off this black and white thing and get into the gray, because that's where the grace is.
Yeah.
You know, and so if we're looking and saying like, no, because you did that, and it's like, well, I did that when I was 18. Do any of us want that 18-year-old judgment? Do we want that to be what we're held to for the rest of our lives?
Right.
Remember when you were 18 and you did?
yeah,
It's like, man, I'm 45 now. I was
Yeah.
18 then. I did a lot of dumb things, and yeah, we're holding you to it.
Right.
So I think that there has to be that part where we have to be willing to just say, there's going to be some dirty hands that are going to come and help move this thing, and and that's where the forgiveness part comes in.
Yeah.
And I know there's this thing where black people always got to forgive. We all have to forgive. You know, what I mean, we all are called to forgive.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me, I just look at it and say, look, another hand pushing this rock up the hill. Come on.
yeah,
You know, and I mean, and people are learning, and they're saying like, man, what I did back then was wrong.
yeah,
You know, and you know the people who are just saying it to just,
yeah,
you know, to get out of a situation, and then you know the people who are genuine.
yeah,
You know, but again, I'm not here to judge. If you want to help us push this thing, then come push it. You know, but I'm not going to turn somebody away,
Yeah.
you know, because of some mistakes that they've made. Because if I was turned away for every mistake that I've made, first of all, I wouldn't be sitting here. You know, but I wouldn't be in any of the situations that I've had in my life, because they would look and go like, no.
yeah,
You know, and so there has to be that forgiveness aspect. And again, coming back to the church, you know, because we have been good at canceling people as well,
Yeah.
even though sometimes we'll do it silently. You know, we'll put those walls up, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
slowly push people away, and then say, I don't know why they left.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really sure why. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, well, because we canceled them. you know, you know, and they really had no other choice because they were, you know, they weren't being spoken to, and they were coming, and you know,
But they were uncomfortable to love. And it was more comfortable to not love them, which is what we do.
right, right,
They're,
and so
they're too messy. We want our church to be nice and clean.
exactly,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's where I think for me, I just kind of come in and say like we have to. It's going to keep coming back to the church, and we are going to have to be the, you know, the example. And that part's going to be uncomfortable for us because we have been silently complicit in this as well. And we have to admit that. We have to be willing to say like, man, you know what? It's been a whole lot easier watching these things happen and not get involved.
Yeah.
Because we don't want the government looking at us.
Yeah.
You know, because it's kind of like, you know, how you were saying, you got the two young boys. And you know the black
Yeah.
boy's getting beat, you know, and
Yeah.
the Asian was being quiet, but he's also not coming to his brother's rescue either.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he's just going. It's easier if I just hush,
Right.
sit here quietly, and that's what the church has done. We've just kind of gone.
Yeah.
That's a political thing, and we've made it a point to not get involved in those things. You know, and now it's like no, like you said, it's a right or wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know, so what side are you going to stand on? And people are looking and they're going, all right, church, what you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying that means that we all have to get on social media and post,
Right.
you know, for that call to action. I'm not, maybe everybody's not comfortable doing that. I'm not saying that you have to go and protest.
Right.
What I'm saying is that find something for you know, and recognize first where you fall in this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, as men, when we look at the human thing, where do we fall in our area of privilege?
Yeah.
You know, being able to do things that women can't do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and where do we come and defend them?
My fear is just because you bring up the social media posts. Like I'm not a big social media guy, but I do worry that that's all people are doing.
Right.
Is they're changing their profile pic,
Right?
and they're saying a few things. They're throwing out some stats, and saying, you know, Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And that's great, and that's good, and you should, but it can't end there.
Right.
Right. I mean, we were talking the other day, like, you know, I remember I was in the Bay Area when Oscar Grant was killed, and we all talked about it, and there was rioting, and then it just kind of quieted down, and life moved on, and that just, you know, and I'm not telling you anything new. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
this is what the black community's been dealing with for hundreds of years. Is yeah, there's a spike. People talk about it. It seems like maybe we'll get justice, and then something else comes along.
Right.
And so my hope is, if you're that person, don't just tag. Don't just put something on social media. You know, follow it up with action, with an actual conversation,
Right.
with actually moving towards change
Right.
and making a change in your sphere of influence. Right?
No, I
because
agree.
it's so easy to put something on.
Oh, of course. Of course. And that's when you look and you say, you know, you've seen all these big organizations come out, you know, we support Black lives and this and that, and it's like, but then, what, like you said, well, what changes are you going to make? Because when I go and I look on your website, you got a bunch of old white guys. Where's your diversity that you just said that you're all about? You know, like put your, you know, you're talking it, now let me see you walk it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think, you know, because of social media, people are saying, look at, I'm doing it, you know, and a lot of it, you know, can be for show. And so that's, you know, that's where, again, for us, not just being comfortable just saying it, but then they're going, oh man, look, he's really about it. Like, he's really out there. I've seen him, you know, he's talking, he's trying to find out how can I help and how can I be a part of this and that. And so we don't want to get comfortable just, you know, saying it, you know, just how, you know, we could say, you know, oh, I'm praying about it. You know, and that can be so passive sometimes. You know, prayer can be active and it can be passive.
That's right.
You know, so sometimes we say it because it sounds great. You know, I mean, it sounds amazing. Like, man, they're praying. Pray. When? How? Where? For what? You know, but it sounds great. You know, I mean, it's, you know, take care.
Yeah.
You don't really care if somebody takes care when you say that. You just, it sounds nice. It's, you know, take care, have a great day. You know, but really, when we're saying, I'll pray for you, I'll pray about it, are we really? Or are we just saying it because it feels good? You know, it's a good thing to say. You know, almost like saying, I support Black Lives Matter. Man, that's great. You know, but then you go back and you don't have any people of color, or I support, you know, the women, but you don't have any women on your staff.
Right.
You know, and so it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, when are you going to take action? And that's a part where you have to look at yourself. And again, you have to find how it works best for you. You know, but do something. Pray at the bare minimum, which we should already be doing,
Yeah.
you know, but at the bare minimum we're praying, but then find out, how can I? You know, maybe it's just reaching out and saying, you know, hey, PD, tell me about some of your experiences. you know? And I mean, it may sound weird, like I'm not gonna ask a white person what they're, no, for real, just like tell me about yours. And then I can tell you about mine, then we can kind of see, man, because, you know, you didn't grow up wealthy.
Right.
So there's still a part where you have felt like you were, you know, where you felt less than.
Sure.
So you can understand. And so it's looking and going, man, I didn't know. You know, I mean, same thing, you know, in the black community where it's like, you know, like we'll hold somebody down for doing, you know, hey, you don't sound black. You don't talk black. You don't dress black. You know, and so even sitting down with people who, you know, two black people and sitting down from different, you know, classes, you know, you got your suburban blacks, you got your hood blacks, you got your, you know, very educated ones, and, you know, sitting down and then going like, wow, you know, really listening and saying like, man, even though we're all black, I'm really learning about these different experiences.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's the part where that's taking action. So find an action step that you can
Yeah.
take.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like it's significant for there to be, for lack of a better term, apologies for people, whether they're white or Asian, to say, you know what, I'm sorry for what I've done or what I haven't done? Are those significant gestures?
Yes and no. I think, I mean, just again, this is just me, but I feel like it has to come from the top. I think we as a country have to just admit what we've done, because it's not just to the black community. You know, it's coming back and saying, because I mean, you can pay out money, but you can pay, we've seen people paid off all the time. They're not sorry for what they did. It's just, here, some money, be quiet. Here's your 40 acres and a mule, shut up. We don't want to hear about what happened anymore. And so I think that part has to come and say like, hey, you know what? We started this country all wrong. We messed up from the beginning, from the time that we got here, the way that we treated, you know, the Native Americans, and then bringing over the slaves, and then when we got things going, the camps, all this stuff. And we have to just be able to, as a country, just come and say, you know what? We messed up. And I don't know who says that. I don't know if that's if it's a presidential thing. I don't know who does it. You know, but I know that we have to just be able to admit, because we don't ever want to. You know, it's like, well, that's the past. Well, the past keeps coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And until we're able to just say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of blood on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to find a way to fix it. And we're admitting that we've messed up.
Yeah.
And you saw them do it in South Africa.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just one of those things where it's like, then you can start to build trust.
Yeah.
Because now you're saying you recognized it. Now you're trying to fix it. They're repentant.
Yeah.
You know,
They're
It's-
repentant.
we're repenting
Right.
to the nation, to saying like, hey, and being honest, like,
Yeah.
you know, we scammed y'all. You know, we killed you guys. We abused you guys. You know, and it's and then just being able to say, we are sorry.
Yeah.
We're guilty of sin.
Yeah.
As a nation, we got to turn this thing around.
Yeah.
We put a system in place,
Yeah.
and then we got to find. And then they'll say, you know, and then of course they'll take us all out of it again, and they'll say, well, we got to find a way to make it better.
It's interesting though, because my sense is that if that sense of repentance came from a white president who was in power, that would feel different than a black president who's saying, okay, we got to do this.
Right.
Because you know, they've been in power, and you know, it was them that, you know, started the country basically as we know it,
Right.
as a nation. For Asians, speak to the importance of our voice in this.
You know what? You guys are in a unique position.
Yeah.
You know, because you guys, you know, have really gone the route of the opposite. You know, and so it's really been a thing. You know, because you guys, it's not just that you guys, you know, have just been quiet, but it's that you guys suffer silently as well. You know, and so it's like even in your pain, you're quiet. You know, even as all this, you know, as we've been dealing with all this you know, this COVID stuff, you know, there's been so much hate that's just been given towards the Asian community, and like, you guys just grin and bear it. You know, and I had put this post up the other day, you know, where I said the squeaky wheel gets the grease. but the silent will, the quiet will, rust in silence. And I look at it because it's just like the noisy people, we know how to deal with them because they're telling us what they want. No justice, no peace. Well, how do we tend to the people who are saying nothing and they're hurting?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's easy for me to say, well, speak up. But I think your voices are important. It's important to, in this era that we're in right now, to find a way, to bring attention,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
bring attention to that.
It's almost as if, to me, if we as Asians speak up to the injustices done to the black community, it seems like that's important, because it's not just the black community trying to defend themselves. We're trying to say, no, this is a bigger issue. This is a huge issue.
Right.
And it's like this multiplying effect of showing how wrong this is.
Right.
When
Right.
you have others coming into the conversation.
Right.
That's something that, I haven't given as much appreciation for. Yeah.
No, I think that's good. I mean, and you see it, when different cases and whatnot happen, another woman will come out, and another person will come in, another victim, and another victim. And I think then it adds to the credibility of what's being said.
Yeah.
Where we're not just saying like, see, it's not just a black issue.
Right.
The Hispanics are being treated poorly as well. And the Asians are being treated poorly as well. And then they're able to look and go, okay, now we're all coming together, and we're the voice gets bigger.
Yeah.
So I do think that we all want to bounce back, and we want to be here to help this community and that community, and as we go around, I think it's important,
Yeah.
To speak up, to bring awareness, and tell this next generation, speak up, to speak up. I know it's not always the cool thing to do, it's not the easy thing to do. For some people it is, but for some people it's not, and so for the ones who it's not, sometimes they have more to say. And so it's really important because you guys have been quiet for so long as a community.
Yeah.
I think you guys' voice would really resonate.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. This week I was in a meeting with several Asian pastors, and we were listening to a man by the name of Michael Sylvester. He's a black chaplain for USC, and he's also worked with Athletes in Action. And he was trying to give us some context too about this whole thing. And one of the things that he tried to impress upon us is the witness for Jesus will be seen as we come together.
Right.
When there's unity. And there's this sense, this opportunity of us coming together as the church to say, this is wrong, we stand in unity, and we should actually see it as a gospel issue.
Right.
Like, this is not only an outworking of the gospel, but it's actually what will make the gospel attractive to people. They'll begin to say, wow, this is so cool when we see the church kind of come together.
Exactly.
Around this thing. So, I don't know, is there any final thoughts you guys want to, I want to go over a few resources and maybe some steps that, we could take. But is there any other thoughts you guys want to share before we close up our time?
I think, just for those that are asking, what can I do?
Right.
I think the biggest thing, for anybody that's asking, what can I do is to get active. Look at, talk to people,
Yeah.
engage, be willing to get uncomfortable, in this, and have those conversations, and reach out.
Yeah.
If nobody else, you can always reach out to me and my family. If you can't find another black person anywhere else, you can always reach out to me and Taryn.
A lot of calls.
Just,
That's good.
But and for us as well, because it gives us the opportunity. So I'm not just saying, hey, reach out. Be willing to be reached out to.
Yeah.
So when somebody like me comes to ask, or PD comes to ask, and then be willing to share your experiences to help people understand. Don't. It's a heart check here.
Yeah.
Check your heart. And don't feel like I don't have to. I shouldn't have to teach you. Well, no, you don't have to, but it'd be great if you did.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be great if you did, because there's a lot of things I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, like Taryn tells me, just shut up and listen. All right.
How do you go?
No, I think Pastor Mike has said it best. I think just having the conversations, be willing to be uncomfortable. I think it's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We avoid the uncomfortability of situations too much.
Yeah.
I think I'll stop there. I'm getting distracted.
I think that to grieve, I just think that that's an important step for us. I think that I was watching this video series called The Color of Compromise by Jamar Tisby, and it's on our Right Now Media. I would highly, highly recommend that we watch that. And he just chronicles the complacency of the Christians throughout our history as a nation. And it's so sobering. And it literally causes me to grieve because those are my spiritual ancestors.
Right.
It wasn't me personally, but those are my spiritual ancestors. And I think there's a place we've been talking about lament and grieving. And I think that we bypass that sometimes because it's uncomfortable, but I think it's good to just rest in that for a while, because out of grief, out of that strong sense that has been this serious injustice, I think something produces inside of us. There's a stronger conviction. There's a stronger resolve to actually then go forward. Right. Because we don't want it just to be something that's like starting a fire with a piece of paper. It flames up and then it goes out so quick, right? You want to allow your heart to be moved so deeply that you go, wow, this now feels personal to me. It hurts me. And I know it's hurting other people. Yeah. And so I think that grief is so important for us to do. And then I would just take a page out of Tisby's his video series, what he talked about. He said 3 things: awareness, growing your awareness, right? And so, I would, like I said, highly recommend that book or his video series, The Color of Compromise. There's a great article in the Gospel Coalition, and it was written by a Korean American by the name of Gene Ju. And he wrote this article, and it was called Unmasking Racism, Beginning with Me. Mm-hmm. And it was so good, I think, of a perspective, because it's so easy for us to point our fingers at everybody else and think, I don't have that in my heart. Right. And I thought he just articulated that so well. Yeah. So I would recommend that. And then he talks about not only awareness, but relationship. Build the relationship. I think this is what we've been talking about. Have the conversation. It's going to be hard. And then, so he uses this acronym ARC: awareness, relationship, and then commitment. That's good. And what he says is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And you're gonna step on somebody's toes. Somebody's gonna want to cancel you just because you're trying. And he says, stay committed. Yeah. So that's what I think those are great steps that we could take.
I agree.
So I'd just like to thank you guys.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you
for sharing. And this is the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pray for us. Lord God, I thank you for the conversation. Thank you for all those who have been hanging in there with us to join in this. And I pray, God, that through the conversation, it will lead to real change, and that there would be something beautiful that comes out of all of this. Lord, thank you that you died so that you might make for yourself this beautiful bride called the church, filled with all sorts of different people. And we just love you for that, and we want to engage with that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us.